So I should have said earlier on that I didn't. That if you are new to the Glastonbury Symposium, of course, you know, we here for many years have tried to look beyond the mainstream, beyond the obvious. And, you know, that's our old slogan, really, but it's still true. Truth, mysteries and new frontiers to expand your horizons. And that's what we're trying to do. And that means not only going into the spiritual stuff like we did today, with the dash of science as well, but also to look at other things that maybe we're not so familiar with. And it's very, very easy in the alternative thinking world just to kind of get used to thinking that lot's over there and this is the stuff that I'm interested in. But something like crypto, or cryptocurrency, as some people call it, it's a big part of the world. But I know, and I'm the same, that many of us don't really grasp what it's all about. So when we heard of Sam X, who is about to speak to us now, we thought this is a perfect opportunity to actually educate ourselves as to what this really is all about, because it is quite hard to grasp unless you get somebody that really understands it. So look, I'm really glad to be covering this subject, and to have someone like Sam here who really does know his stuff is brilliant. So please, a big round of applause for Sam X. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Andy. Delighted to be here in Glastonbury. I read Andy's book, Truth Agenda, many years ago, so it was a great surprise to get an email from a few months ago to invite me to speak here, so I feel very privileged. And as Andy said there, and also he said there in the notes, I was just reading over my morning coffee, this is a really important discussion, because there's so much fear, disinfo, misinfo, confusion around this topic, that I'm here to give a holistic, grounded view of it. Because I'll give you an example of what kind of reactions are out there. And some of you may be having those reactions now, thinking, oh God, it's Friday morning, we're talking crypto and finance. If anybody's feeling that, please just let your shoulders down, keep breathing. Because whenever I say to my mum, she used to phone the bank or do some crypto, her shoulders got that. It's an instant visceral reaction to this topic. And I think none of us have been educated about finance and crypto for a reason. The powers that be want us in ignorance. And really, it's important for us to get out of that, because that's not an empowering place to be. And I'm all about empowerment. You know, I'll give you an example. I did an event recently, and my event's called Crypto Cafe, where I educate about this topic. I went to the local printers, and I got the two reactions I often get. Okay, they saw my logo, said Crypto Cafe, and the woman behind the counter, bear in mind I hadn't said anything, said to me straight away, don't talk about crypto, I'm terrified. I haven't even opened my mouth at this point, and all I want to do is get some printing done. And then her husband appeared, and he appeared sort of like an Agent Smith out the Matrix behind the counter, had heard the word crypto, and he just appeared and rose up behind the counter and said, everybody's lost all their money in crypto. And that's not true at all. But again, those are the two visceral reactions. And I'd argue the system, the power structure, want you in fear and ignorance, okay? And be blinded by the light. So, and also my big bugbear in all topics the last few years is seeing these oversimplified binaries, okay? People in different camps, I'm pro this, I'm anti that. Now with crypto, I'm not neither pro crypto or anti crypto. I just like to know what it is. And from there, we can navigate and decide how you interact with it or not. It's important to understand and get out of that confusion so we have more holistic conversations around it. So in that light, that's why I've called this the rise of crypto and blockchain technology, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because I'm not pro or against, this is something that's happening. We need to understand this shift, and therefore we can decide how we interact with it or not, or how we're wary about it or not. Okay, so it's important to look in that frame of mind. So I'm going to start off talking about something I'm really passionate about. So we're not going to get very technical today. This is just an intro. When I talk about this subject, sometimes I talk for 3-4 hours. We've just got an hour today. I want us to understand where we are and why things are shifting, because these cycles all play into finance and technology. When we talk about crypto, we are talking about finance and technology at its essence, okay? So we'll look at some of the cycles. I think everyone in this room, everybody watching would agree we live in extraordinary times. Very tumultuous times, very pivotal times, very interesting times. And I argue there's a real reason for that from a cyclical point of view, okay? So I'll argue there's a confluence of about 30 to 40 macroeconomic, socioeconomic, revolutionary, astrological cycles all converging around this time, which is why it's so interesting, stroke traumatic, scary, exciting, pivotal. Delete as appropriate to where you feel you are today, this morning. So we're going to look at some of those cycles and then put them in perspective. So I'd argue there's a 250-year cycle linked to Pluto, okay, transit of Pluto, which is coming round again, which is a revolutionary cycle. Okay, so that ties back into the French Renaissance, the American Civil War, that energy is coming back round. So we see lots of big changes. We've also got, and this is pivotal to finance, an 80 to 120 year reserve currency cycle, which is culminating as well, and I'll get into that in more detail. And then within that, we've got 28-year financial crisis or financial shift cycles, and that's all based around Saturn, okay? Anybody who's into astrology, I'm sure a lot in this room are, a lot of you are watching, your Saturn return in life, often really pivotal things happen around 27, 28, 29 years old, and again, 27, 28 years later. So Saturn plays a big role energetically on these shifts, and particularly when it comes to finance, finance doesn't escape these cycles, okay? And then within that 28, we've got some 7-year cycles that play out. So we'll have a look at some of those as well. And then overarching all that, one of the biggest shifts, I'd argue, is an age cycle. We won't try and argue exactly when that's happening or how long that takes, but argue a 2,000-year age cycle moving from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, and that is also informing what we're seeing with the rise of certain technologies, and we'll come to that later as well. So I want to look at the reserve currency cycle in more detail. There's a risk board just showing the map of the world as we think it may be, who knows. But what we want to look at in finance is reserve currencies, okay? Because a reserve currency in simple terms is the dominant currency to trade in across the world, okay? And what's really interesting about this cycle, we're going to go back just to the last century, is that the reserve currencies rise and fall, all of them in the last century, of a period between 80 and 120 years, okay? So if we start around the 12th century, at that point we've got the Venetian ducat and the Florentine florin as the dominant trading currencies, okay? And then, so that lasted between 80 and 120 years, and then it moved on to the Portuguese Empire, okay? And again, their currency was dominant for 80 to 120 years. Then we moved on to the Spanish Empire, same thing, 80 to 120 years. The Dutch Empire with the guilder, same time frame. The French Empire with the franc. The British Empire with the pound, and then what we're currently living under in our lifetimes would be the American dollar and the rise of the military-industrial complex of America, as I like to call it. So what's interesting, all these shifts have had different qualities to them because they have different time frames, but essentially the dominant trade force and the currency everyone's trading in has risen and fallen in an 80 to 120 year period regardless, okay? And we're coming into that period for the dollar as well, and we'll get to that in more detail. So that's a really important cycle, which we're also coming into because we're coming into that 80 to 120 years since the dollar started, and we'll look at that when we look at this century that's happened. So just looking at the last century, okay, 27, 28-year cycles, and again, it doesn't always mean it's bang on because these things take time, but these transits, when I'm talking about 28-year cycle, maybe between 27 and 29 years generally, okay? And same with the 7 years, not always bang on, but the shifts are happening around those times. So if we look in the last century, we've got the First World War, and again, world wars are resets and they are financial resets. I'd argue the wars are bankers' wars, therefore they are big shifts in the financial system as well, because finance is an incredibly important tool of control. As John Adams said in second President of the United States said, there are two ways to conquer a nation. One is by the sword and the other is with debt. Okay, so that's how important. Anybody wants to look further into debt as a tool of control, I really recommend John Perkins' book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, okay? But interestingly, the end of the First World War, 1918, if we forward a Saturn cycle from then, we get to the end of the Second World War, okay? 1944-45. And what's really important in 1944, again, end of that Second World War, lots of reorganization in the world, financial reorganization, that's when we had the Bretton Woods Agreement, which cemented the dollar as a reserve currency of the world, backed by the gold. Okay, and the gold ended up in the United States. 28 years on from that, okay, which we're going to come to in more detail, that's how long that iteration of the dollar lasted because it was backed by gold. We had, in 1971, Nixon taking the dollar off the gold standard, okay, and we'll come back, that's very important. Also, the same year, the World Economic Forum was formed, interestingly. Okay, people are aware of their meddling in the world. I'd argue they were very well prepared, and they began at that point. Then also, 28 years on from there, 2000, 2001, pivotal year for lots of reasons, but we had the dot-com bubble, which was the rise of the internet tech stocks, and we also had a little event called 9/11. I don't think I need to educate this kind of audience on how dodgy that was, But that was, again, a reset in itself of energetically, had a lot of financial implications, beginning of the so-called war on terror. So if we go a Saturn cycle onwards from that, that takes us to the end of this decade, 27, 28, 29. What's going to come then? That's the next kind of culmination. And when I talk about crypto, often I talk about it in relation to the whole financial reset, because I'm not a crypto purist, just like to educate about that, but it all ties into a bigger financial reset that's coming, okay? An end of a cycle and a new cycle coming. So I won't go into all of them, but notable 7-year cycles within those 28 years, things like 86, 87, Black Monday, stock market crash, 1450, big stock market crash in the Far East. A lot of these things happen within these 7-year cycles, within the bigger 28-year cycles. And I like the cycles are natural, but they're also leveraged by the powers that be. Because the powers that be don't control the cycles, in my opinion. They just understand them, and they don't want you to understand them. They are ready for them, and they leverage them, okay? So they're making plans in accordance. But that's not a skill that should be reserved for anybody elite. That's occulted hidden knowledge. This is what this kind of event's all about, is us getting that knowledge back so we understand the shifts happening, so we can act accordingly and prepare and be ready to change. And that's what I'm passionate about talking about. So let's just go back to 1944. Gold, dollar at that time was backed by gold, okay? So the dollar notes being passed around at that time is real money, because it's promissory notes, but backed by tangible real-world assets. That's really important, okay? Because it's a note saying, I promise to pay the bearer. You could, in theory, then cash that in. Now, what happened in 1971 is really pivotal to where we are today and the problems we're facing, and it's all by design, I'd argue, because we know from cycles that cycle lasted 28 years, and in 1971, in simple terms, the United States had a bit of trade deficit with countries like France and Germany. Rather than pay the gold they owed, they threw the monopoly board up in the air and said, we're going to change the rules, okay? And most people didn't really understand what happened, but it's pivotal in terms of our financial system and where we are today, because it's the beginning of our fiat system, our fiat currency. Fiat just meaning by decree, therefore it has value, because you say it has value, but it's very important to see what's happened from 71 to today, and it really informs us of what's going on. And of course, Nixon at that time said, in very jingoistic language, rather than say we've got a trade deficit we're not going to pay, he said, we have got to protect you, the American people, and our precious dollar against outside threats. We always hear about the outside threats, whether they are terrorists, viruses. Well, now we've got people just they owe some money, they're outside threat. We're doing this measure, and again, it's a temporary measure. The old famous governmental temporary measures that never go back, and it didn't go back, of course. But what's really interesting about financial education, the people who understood what happened at that time acted accordingly, because it was a massive, massive shift. But the man in the street, the man and woman in the street, is just getting on their lives, on the rat race, didn't really understand what happened. But when we move from what I call a sound money system, okay, so we're going into sound money, because sound money can be anything, okay? Money can be shells, chickpeas, whatever you want to agree as a store of value. But the point of sound money is that it has scarcity, okay? And there is a cost to bringing more of that money into circulation. So think about gold. A scarce commodity, that's why it holds its value. And if you want to bring more gold into the circulation, there is an output, a cost in terms of mining to bring that into circulation. Therefore, you have a sound money system. When you move to a pure fiat system, where we're literally printing out of thin air, okay? In the old days, printing presses out of thin air, but now it's just typing it into a screen. We're talking about a money system that will always have to fail in the end. It's not sound, okay? But it favors the people in control of it, okay? So we move from a sound money system to a completely unsound money system, which favored the elites, the people who controlled the money system. And as Amsfield, Mayor Rothschild said, I'm paraphrasing, but give me the control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws. Understanding again the power of the financial system of control, okay, over and above their legal system. So what was important in 71 today, if you had £100,000, say, or dollars in the bank in 1971, today, okay, you are down in your purchasing power about 99%. You've lost all that value, okay? And so essentially what's happening in simple terms, the top people are printing money, the Federal Reserve, which has a big, say, monetary policy, the name's a lie again, it's not federal at all, it's a private entity, sits by the government. They are printing money since 1971 out of thin air, understanding it has no real value, and buying real-world tangible assets with it, be it commodity, land, housing, whatever you want to talk about, but real-world assets have value. So essentially they're getting that for free, so the top people are benefiting. By the time that increase in the money supply has filtered down to the people on the street. They have been robbed via inflation, via money printing. It's happening quite rapidly, but not rapidly enough that a lot of people realize it. Now, the smart money in 1971, the people understood what happened. So this is huge. I need to move my wealth out of a currency that's going to be exponentially printed with no end because I'm going to lose value into things like commodities, things like gold. Okay, and the people who did that did very well. So it's important to understand that. So how pivotal gold was in that whole process, and why, real money before 71 backed by gold, and we moved to a pure fiat system. And again, this is just showing pounds to gold from 1971 to today. Okay, so 1971, 10,000 pounds would have bought you 635 ounces of gold. By 2000, that same 10,000 pounds would only buy you 63.5 ounces. By 2023, it got down to about 6.5 ounces. Okay, and what's happened there, it's not that gold's gone up in price. What you're seeing is the collapse of the fiat currency from its exponential expansion. Okay, so essentially the same amount of gold in 1971 would have bought you a nice tailored suit, an evening in a hotel, and a nice meal with your partner. The same amount of gold would do that today, but look how much more fiat currency you'd need to have. Okay, so again, $100,000 pounds in the bank in 71. In terms of purchasing power, you're now sitting on probably under 1,000 today. Okay, and many people don't realize that. So that's why financial education is important. The people did understand that, took action, and it's a really important part of where we are today. So understanding that, and also because of all that, the wealth gap since 1971 has gone exponentially like that. Okay, absolutely strong, because it benefited the top people, and it actually punished everybody else at the bottom of that structure. Okay, so a lot of people say that gold is the money of kings, silver is the money of merchants, and debt, which is what fiat currency is, essentially, okay, every pound, dollar, euro anybody has here is owed to somebody. Therefore, it's a debt-based system, and debt is the currency of slaves, okay? So it's important to understand just how important that point is about that shift, okay? But there's another, we talked about shifts happening, there's another big shift, and I'd argue this is a technological shift, okay? Because I said that we were moving from the age of Pisces, okay, into the age of Aquarius. We talk about the last 2,000 years in Pisces, we talk about whether it's the financial system or it's the legal system, everything's on the water, okay? So we're talking about river banks, citizenships, partnerships, people being in the dock. It's all water language. It's a huge rabbit hole. I'd argue that's come from the Phoenicians on the water, the Phoenicians who became the Venetians on the water, and potentially, although we've had all those different empires rise and fall with the different reserve currencies you saw, I'd argue there are players that sit maybe above all those empires that actually Rome perhaps never fell and just moved. That's a whole other rabbit hole for another day. We're going to try and stick to finance and crypto, but you can see why I end up talking for hours on this topic, because it's bottomless like all good topics. So, but interestingly, we have a shift there, and this is just to show we're going from water to air. So I often get criticized talking about the digital nature of crypto because a lot of people understandably associate everything digital with what's happening in the world as evil, okay? And I'm fully aware of that there is a digital dystopia being built, okay? But I'd argue some of this shift is natural in nature and cyclical rather than it being the elites are moving everything to a digital world. Because when we move from one of the aspects of Aquarius, okay, which a lot of people don't talk about, a lot of people get stuck in binaries as if that was bad, Aquarius is all good. I'd argue there's a full spectrum of energies in all these ages, just different qualities to them. A couple of the qualities of Aquarius, which some people aren't aware of, is high technology, okay? And again, it doesn't mean you have to be pro or against that, that's just part of the energy of that shift. And also, it's an air sign, okay? So we're talking about things going into the cloud, okay? We're thinking about moving off the water into the cloud. So I'd argue this digital shift and this move into the air is part of that shift. The power structure are ready and prepared for that, and they're building their models. But I'd argue it's a natural shift rather than it's just a complete control grid. You know, they want to make everything digital. Now, they've got their own agendas around that, absolutely, but I'd argue there's a natural element to shift. And I think it's important to have that maybe more holistic view and curiosity about it, okay? Because I think it's more complex than that. So, from water to air, really important. So, do we then have, in this new age, we talk about sound money, a rise of a digital gold, okay? being something like Bitcoin, okay? So Bitcoin, like gold, is sound money, okay? And we'll look later about how blockchain works and a bit more technicalities. I want to keep it really simple today. One of the beauties of gold and Bitcoin is the scarcity. Now, Bitcoin is scarce. There's a hard-coded 21 million supply, therefore there will never be any more Bitcoin. And like gold, but in a digital fashion, there is a cost to bringing new Bitcoin into circulation. So really, it's a digital version of sound money. Now, a lot of people say to me, well, it's not worth anything. You know, gold's real, whatever. I just want to say, if it was worth nothing, it would be trading at zero today. I'm not telling you it's worth $65,000 per Bitcoin today. The market is the world, and there are reasons for that, because it has qualities. It has qualities that gold doesn't even have. So it has a lot of the good qualities of gold, like the scarcity, okay, the trustability of it, okay, recognizability, it's becoming more and more recognizable. And that scarcity is really important for a sound money system, but it has qualities that gold doesn't have. Let's imagine you put your wealth in gold. How do you transport it? Okay, how do you divide it up into little units? Okay, and even much harder, how do you verify its authenticity? Is it pure? With something like Bitcoin, you've got all those problems solved. Okay, so in an age where we are already trading worldwide, we're in a different age from previous times. That's just how things have gone. We're already trading across the world. We're in a technological age, whether we like it or not. And Bitcoin answers a lot of those problems, brings the qualities of gold, but with extra qualities to it. This is why people really enjoy using it and love it and has those benefits. The other fact about it is it's really important because of its decentralized nature, and we'll come to that a bit later as well, okay? That you're looking at it being, you know, everything from a centralized money system to a decentralized system, to a taking out state and nation intermediaries, okay? So we'll look at just the rise of Bitcoin. It's had a huge rise. This is just a slide to illustrate the rise of Bitcoin. That guy there, so Bitcoin came around in 2008 on the back of the big crisis in 2007-8, again, which tied into those 7-year cycles, hit one of those cycles. And that was a subprime mortgage fiasco. But really, it's the bankers being bankers, doing all their criminal acts. And that was really a warm-up for the bigger financial shifts that are coming, okay? Biggest one in our lifetime. And Bitcoin was a response to that, saying, you know, let's have a money system that cuts out all these parasite bankers and financial institutions and is decentralized. And in the early days, obviously, it was just very computer savvy, you know, geeky computer geeks who understood it. No one knew where it was going to go. But in 2010, it was trading around, you know, 0.8 of a cent, you know, and a lot of people were giving it to each other free. But this was the first real-world transaction. It's called the Bitcoin pizza transaction, where this guy, Jeremy Sturdivant, was on a message board, and he found somebody saying, I will offer 10,000 Bitcoin if you go and get me 2 pizzas, okay? He took up this offer, and at the time, 10,000 Bitcoin was about $20, okay? Fast forward just to understand the rise of Bitcoin, so that's just 14 years ago. That 10,000 Bitcoin now is worth $650 million, okay? That should put in perspective the growth in that time, okay? So he's probably a very wealthy man today. Enjoyed delivering those pizzas. So what we've got really is a technological shift happening again within a cycle, okay? Because the internet as we know it, as we used it, okay, starting to do our first emails, you know, I can remember mid-90s, around 94, going to an internet cafe, sending an email to my mum, and then thinking I'd have to go back to that same cafe to get it, you know, believing it all went to that computer. You know, so much has happened so rapidly. But that was around 1994, okay? And that was read-only internet at the time. And in essence, when it began, it was quite decentralized. So a lot of people were quite excited about the internet, and it's just read-only. And then, 14 years later, halfway through its Saturn return, okay, its full Saturn return, we moved to Web 2.0, okay? Which is the internet where it began to be different, where we interacting with it. So the beginning of Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all these things where we're uploading data, we're interacting with it, but it's all very centralized at this point. The big tech giants have got hold of it, your Googles, your Microsofts. So in essence, you're uploading your data, but it's all controlled centrally, okay? So YouTube being a perfect example, you upload a video to YouTube, you can interact with it, people watch it, but they own it, they control it, okay? That's really important. That's what we're seeing. Of course, if we're putting this on YouTube, they can say, we don't like something Sam said, we can take it down because it's not yours. All the data you give to Facebook, yes, everyone see it, it is theirs. You know, you are just the customer, you are being used, your data, okay? But what's so interesting is Web 2.0 is also the beginning of apps, and apps, again, whether you like it or not, revolutionized the world, okay? The way we transacted, did business, that was the beginning of the iPhone. So there's been a huge shift in the world from 2008 to today, okay? But when we look at the full 28-year cycle of the internet, it is having its Saturn return, coming of age. We're looking at the dawn of Web 3.0, okay? And Web 3.0 essentially is crypto and blockchain technology, okay? Bitcoin just being the first iteration of it, the earliest iteration of it, okay? There was always a great desire to find the answer to getting internet money, you know, a way of transacting value across the internet that was trustable, verifiable, and Bitcoin was the first iteration, but it was the beginning of this technological shift towards something much bigger, which is blockchain technology, and essentially the next iteration of the internet. And it's important to understand that because so many people out there believe that just crypto is just a rebel currency. That's why I get away from talking about cryptocurrency. Yes, there are currencies within it, like Bitcoin, but this is a huge technological shift, and it's not at all a fad, and the top people understand that. And they always want to say, well, it's just a fad, it's something that's going on, it's people making money, it's, you know, it's internet money, it's, you know, it's just Bitcoin. It is a technological shift, and I'd argue it's the technological baseline of the future. The way the internet revolutionized the world, Web 3 is going to be the next revolution in terms of technology. So it's an absolutely huge shift. So when we move to Web 3, at its core, it's a really positive shift because it's a move back to decentralization, okay? We talked about, you know, Bitcoin being decentralized, you know, so in legacy systems, everything hosted on centralized servers, controlled by centralized entities, be it states or corporations. When you look at something like Bitcoin, you look at all this, the crypto, we're talking about all that software being hosted in a decentralized manner across the world by groups or individuals, okay, with no state intermediary. So it's a real panacea for decentralization, getting away from that centralized big tech and the problem. So a lot of people who are really excited about Web 3 and the rise of this new tech are extremely excited, as many people were with Web 1.0, believed it would democratize things, would really heal a lot of problems. And again, I really want to say that it has that potential. I would argue with my awareness, I think your awareness, of people watching, that there are more agendas at play and more, you know, nefarious agendas at play. I'm not quite as hopeful in that this is the panacea that will sort of problems out. Okay, they are ready for this shift, and they're going to drive this shift where they want to go. Okay, doesn't mean there aren't really useful tools and positive change we can use this technology for. But I want to say, obviously, with the awareness I have, I'm sure most of you have, I don't believe it's a panacea that's going to sort everything out. But in the right hands, it actually really could be extremely powerful. Okay, so Web 3, and the core ethos of Web 3 is about decentralization and ownership of your own data, okay? So that you are taking back control and you've got much more say, okay? So I'll give you an example of a couple of apps, the differences of Web 2 and Web 3, okay? And this is where people don't realize they might be using crypto blockchain technology for benefits without realizing it. So let's think about YouTube, okay? A classic, the de facto web streaming platform, and in its Web 2.0 state, which is where it is, and it's how it will remain, because that's how they want it to be, everything is centrally controlled on YouTube servers. So when I say things I've said today, they don't like it, they take it down, nothing I can do. So they censor me, they control it. Now there are platforms, anybody used Odyssey in the room here? There you go. So Odyssey, built on the blockchain, is a video streaming platform, and you'll notice a lot of people, maybe you've watched, particularly over the last 3-4 years, have left YouTube and are now featuring on things like Odyssey, where they are uncensored, because they've been censored, taken off YouTube, they're now on Odyssey. Now the reason they're remaining on Odyssey without an issue is because it is Web 3, built on the blockchain, it is decentralized, like Bitcoin. So to take down Bitcoin, you've got to take down all the people across the world running the software. To take down Odyssey, essentially, you've got to do the same. So it's all being hosted in a decentralized manner. okay? And that's what makes it censorship resistant, okay? And the reason I'm passionate about educated, I even got attacked by somebody who said, you're talking about digital stuff, crypto, it's all evil. And this is a very clued up person giving great info, and they were using Odyssey to spread this message, without realizing they were quite rightly benefiting from a positive censorship-proof nature of crypto and blockchain technology. So again, I'm not criticizing them, but it's like, get educated and understand you're actually using it, harnessing it for its good purpose, okay? And we're benefiting from that, so we're able to share maybe talks like today, all the amazing speakers, things like that can go out on decentralized web streaming and reach more people without being pulled down, okay? Another good example, we talk about Google being the dominant force, Google Chrome being one of their main browsers. There are Web3 browsers, okay? Brave browser is essentially, looks exactly like Chrome, does the same job for you, but because it's Web3, you are valued as part of that ecosystem, okay? So in Web 2.0, your value is just stripped of you, all your data is sold, you're being advertised to, okay? The reason it's free is because you are the product. When we move to a Web3 iteration like Brave browser, does the same job, but on Brave, you have a say, you are part of that ecosystem. So absolutely, there's advertising, but because you have a say in Web3, you choose if you see advertising or not, or how much. And because you are part of that ecosystem, and it's acknowledged you as part of that ecosystem, should you choose to watch the adverts that come in, you get some of the revenue. Okay, so they have their own crypto token called the basic attention token, because there is money in these ecosystems, there is value, okay? And some of that value has gone to you because you've agreed to give some of your attention to that. So rather than just being between the advertiser and the browser creator and you being the product, you're involved, you have a say. So this is the power of Web 3.0, that actually, we're going from a centralized system where you're just a product to actually you having a say about your, what level of privacy you give up or not, and whether you want to be reimbursed for that. So, because we understand that data is valuable, okay? And what we're moving to in Web 3 is an internet of value. We've gone beyond the internet of information, but how can value move? And Brave's just a great example of that. So you're part of that ecosystem, you can benefit from it. So I really want to understand those shifts. So really, what we're talking about is Web 2.0 in 2008 was the big rise of apps, okay, applications. Web 3, and what a lot of crypto is, or even what people might think of cryptocurrencies, are dApps. And that just means apps, but decentralized, so D-apostrophe apps. Decentralized applications, new value systems, hosted in a decentralized manner, okay? And it's disrupting all sorts of tech across the world. And a lot of people struggle to see the value in it, understandably. And again, I give these talks, and I think I started giving these talks organically, didn't plan to, because I'm not a techie guy either. I don't come from a tech background. A lot of the real people deep in the tech struggle to talk to a lay audience, and hopefully I can be bridging that gap a little bit, because we're talking about the way value moves in ecosystems, and with Web3, let me see where I want to go there. So there's so many angles. Let's bring it back where I want to go with this. But in Web3, you can see you're part of that value ecosystem. The reason it's so hard to understand is that whole new ecosystems are being built, okay? So even for people working in crypto, this is so brand new that it's a paradigm shift. No one's sure where it's going to go, okay? There was a point in history where your phone, okay, your internet, remember dial-up internet came through your phone line. Well, actually, and then it reversed, so actually the phone is coming on the internet. There's a flipping happened. The same thing's happened with the internet, okay? Blockchain's coming over the internet, but actually the internet was built on the blockchain. Everything's going that way. It's a huge shift. So if you think about, again, we're going back to value, what's still so intangible. I always bring up two examples because it's not worth anything. Code, whether you like it or not, one world is worth a lot. Two examples, again, not fans of these companies, but just giving them examples, are built solely on code. They have nothing, and they're huge companies. Airbnb and Uber. Okay, there is nothing tangible. They don't own any properties, they don't own any vehicles, but they are absolutely behemoth giant companies because they're built on code. Now, what's interesting from a Web3 point of view, we could actually have Uber and Airbnb, where you didn't all go through the centralized payment system or dealing direct with people, okay? So I just want to say, that's all what's possible with this technology, okay? How that will actually play out, how much, things will be allowed to play out in such a manner, Who knows? That's all up to, see how things progress, behavior of people. But I think it's important to understand that rather than just go, it's good or bad. It's got the full spectrum of it. So it's important to understand that. So we just look at bit more technical, what is blockchain? Okay, so essentially, blockchain is decentralized ledger technology. Okay, so if you think about in the legacy financial system, just think about the banking system, and when we talk about ledger, it's the accounting book. Okay, all the banks have their own ledgers, their own accounting books, and when transactions happen, they've all got to update and agree where we are. Okay, make it all balance. They're all doing that our own, and it's open to lots of fraud, corruption problems. It's also open to cyber attack problems, whether real or inside job false flags, which is probably much more likely in this day and age. But you can understand, if you had a cyber attack take out bank servers, you can cause havoc. Have all the accounts been settled? Do we know where things are? Is there agreement? Because in that system, you can have the problem of double spend. Somebody sent the money, the other person said it didn't happen. Has it happened? We all agree. So there's lots of complexity in that system. And it's why, despite the fact that transaction in our modern age is very high-tech and rapid, so the way we transact is very efficient using all the applications, the way settlement happens is in the dark ages. Okay, that's why when you're wanting to do in this day and age, we can do everything instantly, but you want to send some money to your family in Australia via the SWIFT system, okay, which is the legacy banking system's messaging system. You might have 4 or 5 days settlement time, lots of fees involved. That is the problem with that system. So blockchain, its essence, is decentralized ledger technology, okay? So imagine a new system, you've got everybody, okay, hosting the same ledger, and it's updated everywhere automatically, okay? So that's how Bitcoin is, okay? Everyone's hosting the ledger on these different nodes, but once it's updated one place, it's updated everywhere, okay? So if you destroyed half the nodes in that system, or you took them all out, as long as one's intact, it's all up to date, it's all in order, it's all as it should be. Okay, you haven't got that problem. So blockchain is a digital system recording information in a way that makes it difficult and impossible to change, hack, or cheat the system. It's essentially a digital ledger of transactions that is duplicated and distributed across an entire network of computer systems. Okay, so the key features being decentralized, no single entity controls a network. Okay, and I'll give you a good example of this. I was in touch with somebody in Russia when the whole Russian-Ukraine proxy war situation kicked off there, and the Russians were sanctioned and cut off for the SWIFT system, okay? And the stock market was down, and this Russian guy I had contact with didn't have any access to his bank account, okay? And remember this, at this point, whether you like it or not, he is a Russian in Russia, okay? But because he had Bitcoin in his own private wallet, he was able to transact through no intermediaries in a decentralized manner with anybody, because anybody in this room where they've never done crypto in their life before, but they've got a mobile phone with internet connection, could have a Bitcoin account in the next 2 minutes, and I could send them some Bitcoin, okay? Anybody wants to do that, we'll meet in the cafe afterwards, and I might give you some Bitcoin. But it can happen very quickly. It's permissionless. It's not based on you being Joe Bloggs in Glastonbury, in the UK, sign up. It is literally, you've got an internet connection, get yourself an account, we can trade, because that transaction is not going through any intermediaries. We're not asking the bank to okay it, based on who we are, who the receiver is. We're not asking for a nation state to say, well, we've sanctioned SWIFT system. It is happening. It's an anonymous payment. It is being validated by the whole network, okay? So that's the power of it, again, very useful. So decentralization, really powerful in this time. Transparent, all transactions are visible to anyone on the network, so it's open source. Secure, okay? So once data is recorded, it's very difficult to alter. So it's an immutable ledger. And it's distributed, so the ledger exists on multiple computers simultaneously. It's very important. So how it works, okay? This is the most technical bit, and we don't worry about it. Anybody wants more technical questions, come and see me, but this is really just a grasp on the intro to it, okay? So essentially on a blockchain, okay, someone requests a transaction. This is how the nuts and bolts of Bitcoin. The transaction is broadcast to a network of computers, okay? The network of computers validates the transaction. The verified transaction is combined with other transactions to create a new block of data. So in a sense, updating the ledger with all the recent transactions to it. The new block is added to the existing blockchain. The new block literally says this is how the ledger is now after all those transactions are gone. The transaction is complete, okay? So think of blockchain like a shared Google document, okay? multiple people can view it and edit it simultaneously, change the record in real time. Everyone with access can see who made what changes and when. It's very difficult for someone to make unauthorized changes without noticing, okay? So applications, this is what's really important to understand. Bitcoin's just the first iteration. But when we had the rise of Ethereum back in 2015-16, Bitcoin doesn't do anything apart from just move Bitcoins around a ledger. Very simple. That's part of its beauty as well, which is why it's become a kind of viewed as a digital gold store of value. But essentially, when we had the rise of Ethereum, the second biggest cryptocurrency in the world, it was taking that same technology, but actually building a platform that everybody else could build applications on top of. Okay, so we've gone from this idea of cryptocurrency to basically decentralized applications for all sorts of new value ecosystems. It's vast, okay? And it is absolutely disrupting industries already and will continue to disrupt, I'd argue, most industries. And a lot of people are harnessing it, using it under the bonnet without knowing. So this revolution is happening. And again, a lot of people say to me, saying, well, if this gets big and everyone's going to come to talks and learn crypto and get into the depths of it, that's the same as the internet. Most people don't understand how the internet works, but they're using it all the time. This is under the bonnet. So it's not that everybody out there is going to have to get to grips with blockchain and crypto, as they didn't really have to get to grips with the internet. Yes, at a basic level of applications, but generally it's all happening under the bonnet. No one knows how it works. But this revolution is happening, okay? It's not a fad. It's in motion. And again, it's being explored for use. I mean, it's starting to get use in all these different ways. Supply chain management, voting systems, healthcare records, real estate transactions, as we talked about, video streaming, hosting, gaming. It's everything, really. It's absolutely vast, okay? So in essence, blockchain is a way to store and transfer information in a secure, transparent, and decentralized manner. So in key, hooking up computers was the first way the internet transformed the world. This is a new way of hooking up computers that's going to revolutionize the world, okay? Using their storage capacity, their power, and the way to have all these networks is absolutely huge, and it's going to disrupt everything. But obviously, I said I started off with there being the good, bad, and ugly. And just to give perspective where we are, I think, in terms of the timeline, if you think about the dot-com bubble era, okay, the dot-com bubble, which was the beginning of the internet taking off and transforming the world, in 2000, 2001, the dot-com bubble was about $3 trillion. The crypto market as a whole, when I'm talking about the crypto market, that's all the digital assets. And I call them digital assets rather than cryptocurrencies because within that whole space, there is everything. It's a new asset class, okay, full of all sorts of different applications. But the crypto market today is just under 3 trillion. So it's the same scale, okay? Now, what's interesting in 2000, 2001, when the dot-com bubble burst, and when it burst, it had a lot of speculative money in it, and again, it was part of those cycles I talked about earlier. A lot of people thought that's the end. It was a fad. It's not going anywhere. Was that the end of the internet or the beginning? It was the beginning. Crypto is at the same scale today, okay? And I'd argue, and it's developing at a faster pace than the internet was before, and I'd argue it will have a similar trajectory, okay? So at the moment, it's an absolutely tiny asset class, but it's the baseline technology of the future for good, bad, and ugly purposes, okay? Now, we talked about a lot of the good purposes, Bitcoin being a decentralized way of transacting. I know people in similar line of work to me who are censored, particularly in the United States, for educating on this topic or even selling alternative health products because a way of controlling people is cutting them off economically. Now, if you're in the legacy financial system and you get cut off from your banking system, you get cut off from all the payment providers like Stripe and PayPal, they're all in bed together. That is a way of sanctioning your activity. Maybe it's giving good info, showing good info, education, or maybe it's natural health products that the system want to keep down. Those people in the last 3-4 years have been able to continue trading and helping people because of Bitcoin. So you can see it solving an issue. And again, we talked about the censorship-proof nature of blockchain technology. People have been able to continue getting their message out on platforms like Odyssey because they're able to get off that Web 2.0 centralized, censored platforms like YouTube. So we look at the positive side, and again, there's loads going on the positive side as well, decentralized solutions. But bear in mind, this is the baseline technology of the future, so the power structure are absolutely building their digital dystopian world using the same technology, okay? And I'd argue that, if more people don't wake up to what's going on, a lot of people in this world are actually going to be blocked and chained by blockchain, okay? as a lot of people were webbed and netted by the internet, okay? Because this is the whole financial system, the whole world. We talk about financial reset coming, everything is moving onto the blockchain. Now that, in essence, is not a problem technology-wise, because I'd argue that technology is neutral. The problem is the nefarious agendas behind it and where they want to go with that tech. So when you've got a neutral tech, it can be used for good, bad, and ugly, okay? Freedom, decentralization. What's interesting, they are building central bank digital currencies, which is the complete diametrically opposed thing to Bitcoin, using the same technology, okay? So again, rather than throw the whole technology out, say it's all evil, understand that it's like a nettle, okay? You can grasp it and use it and make a lovely nettle healing tea, or if you're passive, know what's going on, you might brush and it might sting you, okay? It's the same thing, but it's, different energies to, the way you use it and the intent behind it. So central bank digital currency, I'd argue it's coming, not just because I can see all the roadmaps, we know it's coming, because in essence, a digital currency, and bear in mind that most of our currency is already digital, okay? So yes, I'm pro-cash, because cash is about privacy and transaction, but I'm realistic that, there's only about something like 3 to 7% cash in the world today, okay? So we're talking about almost 95% of our money being digital already. But right now, a pound or a dollar or euro that's digital on screen is still just a pound, a dollar, or a euro, has no other quantities to it. With central bank digital currency, it can have a lot more quantity because of what's baked into technology. But if you didn't have nefarious agendas behind it, it would be a great advance to move our current digital system onto the blockchain, okay? Because what you're looking at is a more secure system, a more trustworthy system, a system that is faster, more efficient, and actually would cut out loads of parasite middlemen entities, okay? And a lot of costs. So a lot of people working on this shift are not in on any evil agenda. It is a tech advance. That's kind of why I see it's inevitable, because it's an incredible technological advance. It's just, unfortunately, baked into the tech is the potential for much greater dystopian digital surveillance, okay? And that's where we're going to bring in the topic of smart contracts, okay? Because essentially, that is the problem with CBDCs, central bank digital currency. If it was just moving your normal digital pounds you see onto the blockchain, as I said, you would have a more efficient system. It would be more proof of problems. It would be more transparent. But unfortunately, we've got this issue where, smart contracts is a technology by saying, on top of all this blockchain layer of just transacting, we can put extra info on there, okay? And smart contract is just saying we're going to put almost extra information to a transaction. Now, that's not a problem if myself and one of you in the audience side, we want to do a smart contract between each other that we both agree to. That's fine. That's just us harnessing the technology. Imagine we had a deal on a house and we said, well, if we agree it's gone through, when it's triggered, this transaction, that amount of money will go exactly there, that money will go there, that money goes to the person who did that. We've all agreed on the terms of the contract, and it happens automatically rather than having to chase up and argue who's done what. So it's a very efficient way of transacting. So it's not a problem. But what we're going to be seeing with central bank digital currency is the top-down imposition of smart contracts. So again, it's not the smart contract itself that's the problem. It is like all these things, it's a top-down imposition saying that is on your system. You have no other choice, okay? And that could come in all sorts of forms. As we know, they're looking to go towards a carbon credit society. Again, lots of people already have carbon. I've got somebody speaking in Australia, they've already got a carbon tracker in their app. Somebody said NatWest in the UK have brought in their carbon tracker just for your own interest at the moment, but that become normalized. And essentially, as we know this technology, you can then put loads more caveats on people's spending, okay? You can then say, here's some money, but actually it's got a time delay on it, it will run out, it can't be used in certain geographical locations. There are whole sorts of dystopian ways that they can go with that technology. That's the real issue, okay? So at these two different spectrum ends, you've got decentralization, censorship-proof, permissionless blockchain, i.e. you need no permission, you know nothing. And at the other end of the spectrum, you've got closed walled gardens, permission blockchains that they want to usher people into. Again, people need to use them to function in the main society, okay? I think that ties into digital IDs, having a digital wallet, and again, everything being tied to your ID, okay? So I really want to make it clear that within this technological shift, we've got the full spectrum, the absolute full spectrum, okay? So what I kind of see is why I'm keen to educate this topic is I think one needs to be very wary and also understand how certain things might be there to help you, where things are potentially going, so we're very wary, and then you can make an empowered decision of how you interact with this tech or not, because you go and grab that nettle and you decide, okay? Now, if we're passive to this technology and we don't make, better choices and get proactive, then I fear a lot of people will be a victim of this technology overall, okay? But the more we can support decentralized systems, then they're going to help them flourish. So again, even for me, starting to move towards more decentralized ways, we're not going to get adoption of the decentralized technology unless people understand them and use them and support them. And that's how networks proliferate, okay? So when you get a decentralized network, the reason the growth is so great is like mobile phone networks. This is network effects, Metcalfe's law. So things do tip rapidly. But people need to understand the different alternatives and where they can go and how they harness that technology. So I think, in essence, we're at a time in history where there's a bit of a digital arms race, okay? We know where they want to go with that digital system, but we also think if we're going to use these tools, where do we want to go? How do we manage that? So that's where I sort of tie in this whole chat of going into the financial reset, because that is coming, okay? And we talked about the different iterations of the reserve currencies. I'd argue we're moving into a different time where it's not so geographically based. It's perhaps more of a worldwide blockchain system that they're looking to trap people in. And a lot of people are excited by the rise of the BRICS nations, okay? Brazil, Russia, India, China, more joining along. I'm skeptical, and I think it's important to have a healthy skepticism, okay? I talked earlier about thinking that perhaps Rome moves rather than falls. And a guy, Jim O'Neill, who I think worked for JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs, correct me if I'm wrong, it's either one of those ones, he actually coined the term BRICS 20 to 30 years ago, okay? Talking about this potential rise of these nations. And again, I'd argue he's a banker inside understands the system. So I think this might be a shift to the same power structure are looking at. So it looks like a more decentralized power structure, but potentially that is the building blocks of a worldwide new world order of types. Okay, I'm not going over a tangent, but I think it's important to, always have healthy skepticism and that we take better action ourselves. Okay, if good things happen in those bigger geopolitical shifts, great, but what can we do ourselves in our local communities? So I think, to sum up, crypto at its core is decentralization, but that's what I'm passionate about as a whole. The good side of crypto is about real decentralization, but if we can decentralize more and more in all senses, that's going to benefit us, because really, we want to take back as much control as we can, have as much say. And when I talk about, and that's where, a lot of people, I talk about financial education is really important, because they rely on you not understanding what's going on and being trapped in their systems. If you can start making moves ahead of the time, then you can do better. So I go back to 1971, the people who understood what happened when we moved from the gold standard fiat currency, they took action to protect their wealth, okay? And your wealth is something that's, your value, your time, your energy. So rather than being stuck in their system, being robbed in that fiat money printing, they sidestepped, they took a better action. So that's why I'm passionate about educating about decentralizing your assets, protecting yourself, moving to new areas, so you're less of a victim of the agendas that come down the line. And, education is empowerment and moving through that. So thank you for listening today, and I hope that's given you a bit of an insight into this shift that's happening of crypto and blockchain technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam X.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Right. Listen, we've got 5 minutes. Does anybody have a question at all? We do have a lady here. Excuse me.
Sorry, can you hear me on that?
Yes.
This is probably a very thick question.
No, there's no questions too thick. It's a safe space.
I've actually got cryptocurrency.
Yep.
I don't understand what it is. I gave my son £1,000 to pay for my funeral and in the future, and he invested it in cryptocurrency of some sort, some kind of Bitcoin or something, I don't know. And then it made a lot of money, apparently, and I asked for it back, okay, which caused a bit of controversy, who's the extra money was. Anyway, but I had to wait. So what I don't understand with Bitcoin is how can you actually use it? Like, I can't like say I couldn't go and buy coffee with it there in the break. So how is it?
Okay.
How is it
I
flexible? That's the bit I don't understand.
Okay. Well, I could buy some coffee in the break and with
You
it.
could.
So essentially, what you've got now, rather think about, some people think, well, how do I use all these things? But it's almost think about, especially the Bitcoin. And again, I want to be really clear. When we talk about, I've got some crypto, there's a huge difference between Bitcoin, Ethereum, all these different assets. It's a huge world within an asset class. So think of Bitcoin standing alone, okay? And you get a lot of people who are Bitcoin purists, understandably so, because it has a purity to it in the way it's been designed. But essentially, right now, you could obviously, there are lots of intermediary platforms called fintech, okay? So it's finance moving to the next technology age, where you could absolutely move your Bitcoin onto a platform and then put it on a debit card. Now, the key is when you've got your Bitcoin properly, and this is what I educate people about, it's very important. That's why I say if you're going to do crypto, do it properly. I never promote crypto and say, you need to get crypto. Get educated about it, why it might help you, why you might be interested. If you do it properly and learn, because then you do it in an empowered state and you really can benefit. And a lot of people in that situation, like you said, man, where I've got it, I don't know how it works, confusion, that's not empowerment. That doesn't help you. But actually, there are lots of platforms where when you've got your Bitcoin properly, you control it in your own private wallet, and you're the only person in the world who controls that Bitcoin. Nobody can take it off you. A lot of people have been kind of confused by the press reports, by design, I argue, like the Canadian truckers who raised a lot of money in Bitcoin, and the Canadian government seized it. So a lot of people say to me, saying, well, I don't want Bitcoin, it's digital, the government will seize it or turn it off. That's not what happened, and that's why the mainstream never report properly on this topic. Essentially, when you have your Bitcoin in your own private wallet, you're the only person in the world who controls that Bitcoin. Nothing anybody can do. When you put it on a third-party platform, which is where the Canadian truckers fundraised Bitcoin was, then absolutely it's on a platform linked to an entity, linked to an ID, like a bank account, and at that point, the powers that be can come down and freeze your bank account. So understand that they are intermediaries, but from a payment point of view, I could store my value in Bitcoin, have it nice and secure. Now, I could pay somebody peer-to-peer, i.e. could pay you directly. With your Bitcoin address, we could pay each other. But in terms of the coffee, the real-world use, I could move some of my Bitcoin out of my private wallet onto the platform. Okay, think of it like an online crypto bank. And then it's on my MasterCard or my Visa card, usually MasterCard these days, and I can go and pay. Now, what's happening is they're not accepting Bitcoin. That platform is doing a sale into the local currency, into fiat, into pounds, and you're paying that way. So that is something that's very doable. So people do worry, I want it, but how do I use it? But you actually can store your value in it because you understand you're in sound money, like gold. But also, I need to interact with the world as it is today, understanding, being a realist. But I can maybe send £100 worth, pop it on my card, and go around shopping. So yeah, that's all doable. And becoming more and more doable,
One very short question, please. Thank you.
Yes, I had a question about Bitcoin.
Yep.
Usually, I find that when something new comes, whoever creates it benefits from it. So
Yep.
who benefits from Bitcoin and Ethereum?
Good question. I mean, this goes down the rabbit hole of, was Bitcoin created by DARPA, the same people created the internet? Very possibly. And that's why I'm not a purist on this topic. I understand it has much greater benefits to it in the short term, but that's why, and again, I'm not a crypto purist at all, and it's a really good question. All I can say in terms of my lifetime, what I've seen, is I know lots of people benefiting from using Bitcoin, benefiting from using crypto technology, even if it was a creation of the same, maybe darker agendas who created the internet. It's got that spectrum in it. So it's a great question. It's something I'm always open to. I don't know exactly the origin story. No one can get to the bottom of it. And that's why I try and stay grounded and look at the benefits and pros and cons. So would I rather be... See, some people say to me, understandably, I don't want to touch Bitcoin because I'm worried the elites created it. That's fine if you want to say that, but you've still got pounds. You've got the most evil currency in your pocket, using that every day. So you always have to compare. This is the problem. People go, oh, no, I want this or that. What's really interesting is if you have some pounds, you've got the most centralized debt instrument in your pocket, controlled totally 100% no argument by the people you may despise or maybe running against, yet you're worried about a decentralized thing that stood the test of time, helped lots of people, because it might have an issue. Okay, and I think it's important always to put those things in balance. That's why I'm not a completely, this is the way, it's amazing, this way, but weighing up the pros and cons of the different ones. And again, there's manipulation everywhere. I'll give a great example, perpetual value. The gold market is absolutely manipulated, as all markets are, since time immemorial. Was that a reason to not go into gold in 1971 and stay in dollars or pounds? Absolutely not. Because the ultimate manipulation was doing nothing and staying safe. I often say that, stay safe in what you know, and then you've been robbed 99% by stealth. So again, always weigh up the different aspects, and then you have a much better way of saying, where do I want to be placed? And again, use the tools to your advantage. And again, I think it's a long-term process to see where this goes. I think take proactive, positive steps, and then we have a much greater chance of going on that journey to improvement over time.
We've got to stop there. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, Andy.
Sam Axe, thank you. Brilliant stuff.